to understand the effect that music has on us, it is only necessary to ponder the natural phenomenon of sympathetic vibrations. These vibrations, or pulsations, belong to that range of speeds which, when carried on the very air we breathe, generate resonance in our bodies, in its hollows, its organs, in our head, and so on. These vibrations become perceptible and intelligible mainly through the faculty of hearing in our ears, but, as this film will show, not exclusively so. Thus, by very definition, response is the overriding and principal quality and effect of sound. Music and language, song and words, the human voice, and, as we shall see in a magnificent example, the whole human body in dance, which is the visual and physical expression of vibration and rhythm, that is, of music. These are the self-generating efforts of the human being to convey a particular response. We react and respond to these airborne vibrations as they impinge on our tympanum and, in fact, on the whole surface of our skins. Thus, between two human beings, the measurable natural phenomenon of sympathetic vibration becomes the immeasurable human phenomenon of compassionate vibration, which accounts for the extraordinary effect that the active making of music has among the deaf, who might otherwise be cut off from one of the main means of contact.
Music and dance plays a very, very important part in my life because it's helped me to live. It's helped me to be able to communicate with people, which I think is the most important thing in life. If you can't communicate with people, you know, it's a pretty bad thing.
Communication is a preoccupation of Nina Falaise, not only as a performer, but also because she's profoundly deaf and has been since birth.
Obviously, in my case, although I'm dedicated to ballet and music, there are so many things in life that one can do. Life is too short to cut other things out. But certainly, from a point of view of surviving, music and ballet have helped me more than anything in the world.
The notion of music for the deaf seems ridiculous at first. You might suppose that this group of deaf children, apparently enjoying the experience, are only dimly sensing the vibrations, not actually hearing the music. But virtuoso bass player Gary Karr is convinced that their sensitivity goes deeper than that.
Well, it was in the 60s when I was teaching at the University of Wisconsin, and there was a physician who was doing some research in the field of the audio and with the hearing impaired, asked me to come and play for a class of deaf children. I thought it was a rather peculiar thing to do because, you know, having had the concept that deaf meant totally deaf, seemed very strange to be coming before a bunch of children and playing for them and expecting that they heard me. So I did it, and quite a revelation to me. They did hear, and it was so evident by the expressions on their faces that, especially when I was doing things emotional, you could see, without my making any expression, but just through the music itself, that they were responding to the music.
Right on, yeah.
Right
it happens
on.
very, 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 very often.
Well, she did too. It was
Yeah.
amazing.
She'll change.
They're singing the exact pitch. She's so fascinated. It's amazing. You know what's so amazing is that they're drawing the bow at the right speed, which on the bass is really difficult. The thing that fascinates me is that if you give a hearing person the bow and have them draw across the strings, they would never synchronize with the vibrations because they would do it mechanically. They just go bap, you know, and they'd produce a scratch, something like this. Not the sound. But she won't do that. She's producing a pure sound. Draw slow, like... student who can produce a sound like that on the first attempt. It's really amazing.
Good morning. Good morning. Beautiful. Good morning. Good. I hear your voice. Good. Good. More. Ning. All right, that's it. We. Use your voice again. We. Use your voice, Nicole. We want to.
The music lesson is an integral part of the curriculum at the New York State School for the Deaf. From kindergarten to junior high, the children are offered a full music training. The program has been devised by Clive and Carol Robbins. Clive, a pioneer in the field of music therapy for mentally handicapped children, was originally skeptical.
I was offered a consultancy here to map out a curriculum, the form of a curriculum for hearing impaired children. And week by week, as we worked, the children amazed me because I was still burdened with all the prejudices that are very common everywhere. And I had to learn that indeed we underestimate the auditory capabilities of deaf children.
The concept of deafness dates back a long way. People used to think that you either had normal hearing or you were deaf, and that perhaps somewhere in between there was a fuzzy region where you were hard of hearing. But now we realize that between normal hearing and total deafness, there's a wide range of degrees of hearing loss. And in a school for the deaf, such as this school, the percentage of children who are totally deaf is very small, perhaps 5 or 10%, and the rest have different amounts of residual hearing.
One. Louder. Beautiful. Again. All right, Derek. Bell. One. Bell. Good. One. Bell. All right, now, sing with me. Ready? One bell. Let's hear a bell. Beautiful. Okay, now, together. Okay, let's have it more. Together, ready? One bell. I hear one bell. Now, at this stage, we're working for an awareness of sound and silence, particularly for an awareness of either rhythmically or tonally meaningful sound. So in this piece, one bell, I hear one bell. The instrumental sound, the playing of the instrument punctuates each phrase of the speech. Similarly, when the child plays the bell antiphonally with the piano chords change, but they're always related to the bell tone. And this wonderful, very elemental feeling of give and take between the child and the adult. And the sound is going in, sometimes consciously, mostly unconsciously at this age, but nevertheless it's building an orientation towards sound, an expectancy of oral experience. I hear one voice. Can you?
very basic properties to sound that can be used in forming musical patterns. And one of the most basic is rhythm, because it's intimately related to movement, which is very fundamental. There is no difference in the way deaf children can handle and perceive rhythm when you compare them with normal children. For example, that some children will hear low-pitched sounds but not hear high-pitched sounds. And what that might do to the perception of an instrument like the piano, for example, is that while they may hear the sound of the high notes, they're not really hearing the musical sound, but the noise made by the instrument. If I can illustrate that, by damping out the vibrations of the strings down here, you hear the musical note, and you're unaware of the fact that you're also hearing the sound of the hammer hitting the strings. But up here, if I dampen these strings, there are noises which are really not musical. And you may have a deaf child tell you, yes, I can hear those sounds, but in fact, they're not perceiving the musical quality of the sounds.
When we play this game of walking forward to the piano and back to the drum, there's really nothing very original about that. That kind of training should be part of any program for the education of the deaf. With working with young children like this, the one sitting on the side often become as involved as the child walking up and down, because they can see the piano and the drum and they can monitor his response at the same time they're taking it in orally. And sometimes we have to stop the children cueing each other and really cheating on the game.
There have been scientific studies of the ability of deaf children to perceive differences in the pitch of sound. And it turns out that even children with very severe hearing losses can hear the difference between two notes a tone apart, or even, in many cases, a semitone. That's only about a 6% change in pitch, and it's been found that children with 90 decibel hearing losses, for example, can perceive, with training, a 5% change.
Now the headset.
When we measure someone's hearing, the audiologist would take the child, for example, into a sound-treated room and then present tones at various pitches, and for each tone find the quietest level that the individual could hear. These results will give us a measure of the amount of hearing loss, or conversely, the amount of residual hearing. The test can be repeated while the child is wearing a hearing aid, and this has the effect of making it possible for them to hear quieter tones, and so we get a different result, which shows a greater area of hearing. Then we can make sound level measurements. We can make a tape recording of the musical instrument that the child would be playing, cut a loop, and analyze this with a third octave spectrum analyzer. Take the decibel measures, transfer those to the child's audiogram, and then compare the results with the child's hearing level. And we can show that a profoundly deaf child might not be able to hear a particular instrument without the hearing aid. But once the hearing aid is in position, then the instrument becomes audible, and we can see which overtones are audible, whether it's the fundamental frequency or the higher overtones, and so on. Certainly, we got results that confirmed what the Robbinses had found out in practice, and that is that most deaf children wearing hearing aids can hear not just the fundamental frequency, but also many of the overtones of most of the musical instruments that they would be using. I think there was only one instrument that seemed not to have suitable characteristics, and that was the concert triangle, which consisted mostly of very high frequencies. But all of the other instruments were accessible auditorily to a profoundly deaf child wearing a suitable hearing aid. There would still be a minority of children, the 5 or 10% who are totally deaf, whose only experience of the sound would be through the sense of touch. They would feel the vibrations and not hear them. But the rest, the other 90%, were, on paper, able to hear them.
The audiological tests provided scientific evidence for what the Robbinses were already finding in practice, that most hearing-impaired children were able to hear and enjoy music with a suitable aid. Lisa has been learning the clarinet for 4 years. She's profoundly deaf with a 90% hearing loss.
Okay, let's go back here. 25, that line underneath. Long, okay? Means long. Now the dot, what does that mean? Short, short. Here we go. So the first one is long, second and third are short. Ba, ba, ba. Ready? The hearing child has as much difficulty with intonation. It's a very physical thing to be able to hold your embouchure tight enough to blow enough air through. It's more or less physical in the elementary stages, if a child can play in tune or not. As they get older, it is more auditory. The very fine fluctuations in pitch are more auditory, and I think some deaf children would have a problem with that. That's the way to do it.
For most deaf children, this area of auditory experience is grossly neglected. They learn to speak, or they have their speech training in this area, but very little that brings them spontaneous joy and increases their motivation to live in their hearing naturally, as we all do. And I think what we're doing is, to some extent, rounding out the personalities of the children by supplying this missing area of really experiential growth and awareness. I mean, our children, after 7 years, you can see where they have reached. Another 7 years, another 7 years. Where will it all grow?
Now, a hearing child, growing up through the years, is watching TV, listening to the radio. He's got a lot of musical knowledge that he's been hearing, either watching cartoons or whatever. That deaf child doesn't get this. He comes to the music program with virtually no musical experience. So when we teach them instruments, they're learning music through the instrument. Whatever they're learning through the instrument at that time is where they are musically, as opposed to the hearing child, who might have a lot. Well, he has probably nine years of musical experience before he starts an instrument, and he's got all of this behind him. Okay, right there, on the A, high A. Oh, it was beautiful that time. What's the name here, Lisa? F, right? E. Yes, E. That's it. 1, 2, and. Here we go. Ready?
The band has reached a standard of playing that a school for children with normal hearing would not be ashamed of. The music staff here are convinced this achievement is due to the way the hearing aid boosts residual hearing. But for Gary Karr, the perception of sound is not just a matter for the ears.
I'm now convinced, I feel very strong about it, and someday I hope to prove it, that as a performer, I certainly learn so much from it. I would say that probably 80 to 85% of my playing is proprioceptive. It's perceived by the body. And maybe 15% of it is aural, A-U-R, aural. Because by the time you hear what you're producing, it's too late to do anything about it. The perceptions have to occur sooner. Also, the sound of the instrument, as I draw a sound, it goes out. It's not even near me, so that what the audience hears is probably quite a bit different from what I'm hearing to begin with. So I do play by feeling. Every bass player knows this in the orchestra. In fact, every musician in the orchestra knows this. You play a note, and the orchestra's playing this huge chord around you, and you cannot hear yourself play. But somehow, if you move your finger into the right note, it blends with everything going around you. But if you play slightly out of tune, it kicks back. And you know it's not right, even though you can't hear it. You can feel whether it's in tune or not. Do you like the trumpet?
Yes.
Do you practice a lot?
Yeah.
What do you like about the trumpet the most?
I like to play music.
And what is it about music that means so much to you? Do you like all the notes? Or do you like the emotions? Or just the sound?
I just like to play. I just like to hear music.
You like to hear? Do you like my music?
Yeah.
What do you like about the double bass? Do you like the sound of it?
We have many different sounds.
Many different sounds. Is it? Do you like it as much as the trumpet?
Yours.
You like mine better? Well, you'll have to study the double bass then. Do you want me to teach you? Or do you want to still play the trumpet?
To play trumpet.
Do you want to play in an orchestra someday?
Yeah.
You do? You keep practicing and you can. I have 2 double bass players, 2 students who had a hearing impairment, and they now play in symphony orchestras, both of them. And you know why? Because they practiced 5 hours every day. Are you ready to practice that much?
Yes.
You have to love it a lot.
Yeah.
Great.
Musicality, whatever it is that defines human response to musical sounds, really has nothing to do with the ears. It's something that resides in the brain and in the emotions of people. And the ears are simply a window through which sound gains access to musicality. In the case of hearing impaired children, the window is not as clear as it should be, but the sounds are still accessible. I think that involvement in musical activities is one of the best ways of training hearing impaired children to use their residual hearing sense. It has been suggested that musical activity has spin-offs in terms of improved speech development. I don't think there are any research data to support that, but many people believe that there's a carryover. And then there are the social and emotional benefits, which are much more general, which would also apply to normally hearing children, of the creative aspect of music, the aesthetic enjoyment, and the benefits that come from group collaboration in the production of music.
The end-of-term concert is a good opportunity to show off the children's skills. But many people are yet to be convinced that it's all worthwhile, not least the deaf themselves.
I think the main obstacles are really social ones. They're prejudice. There is a long-standing tradition, of course, that the deaf can only get music through vibration or rhythm, and what we're showing is that this is not the case at all. This is just the beginning, perhaps, but we go way, way beyond that. But many people live with these ideas, and many people actually want to keep the deaf deaf. They don't want them to use that residual hearing because it would be too much of a revolutionary change in their own thinking. Then the other area really where we would run into problems and do run into problems is with the deaf community. The deaf are naturally very sensitive to their handicaps, although many deaf people do not like to think of their hearing loss as a handicap. And they would hold that music making for the deaf does not belong to deaf life. It's not, they even think it's a little bit, it lacks respectability. It's a little bit, something a little crazy that the hearing world has imposed upon the deaf world. And there are people who believe, for example, that hearing impaired people should not use their voices, should rely on sign language, and should not use hearing aids. So that, in fact, we encounter this deafness of attitude at the high school level, and very often promising students, instrumental students, will tend to drop out. But it's slowly changing, and we are actually moving quite gradually into this area of the high school.
The junior recorder group at Mary Hare Grammar School for the Deaf in Berkshire take advantage of a warm summer's day to play outside. The informal style belongs very much to Bill Fawkes. 6 years ago, he set out with the idea of playing a few pop songs with some of his pupils. Now it's Canons by Thomas Tallis, and music is a popular option in the school curriculum.
From my point of view, what I'm doing is music for its own sake. No particular... I was going to say no particular aim. In a certain sense, that's right. We want to make music. The children enjoy making music, and therefore why not make that an end in itself? Any spin-offs, any results, any good things coming out of this is, of course, tremendous, but in first place, it's music that has the charms, and they're what we want to enjoy.
Though Bill's prime interest is to promote music as fun, he's been pleased to observe some therapeutic side effects.
Another thing, too, is when a child plays a recorder, the tonguing that is necessary in playing a recorder, I think this also can be a spin-off in the field of speech. One girl in particular has actually said that herself, that she felt that playing a recorder helped her to improve her speech. We're having problems of holding that long note. Just see if we can hold a nice, steady, long note. Just the long note itself. Are you ready? See how long we can do it with controlled breath. 1, 2. Good. Can you hold it like that? Lovely, lovely. What happens is they tend to become more ambitious as they go on. At first they start off and they make a sound which, however atrocious it is, they enjoy it. For example, we've got one or two learning brass instruments at the moment, trombone and trumpet. And the joy of actually making a sound in the first place is sufficient to keep them going along. And then when they start putting a few sounds together, they enjoy that. I think the enjoyment, the feeling of achievement probably outweighs frustration to a great degree. Stop you there. Hilary, at the beginning, I wonder, boom, boom, boom. Your first note, it was slightly clipped. Can you just play your first few notes? That's right, coming quite firmly at the beginning with everybody else. Tenor, not quite so shrill. Keep the breath down a little bit and calmly. Right, can we start from the beginning? Remember all the points we just made. I think the gaining in self-confidence and poise is an important aspect. You find that music works on deaf children as it does on hearing people. You get a feeling of achievement, a feeling of satisfaction, which can help in frustrated moments. They listen more acutely. This is very important with deaf children who using the residual hearing that they've got, listen more acutely. And of course this, from doing this in music, it will spin off, of course, into the classroom, into the everyday situation. They will begin not to hear better, but to use what hearing they've got more acutely.
The school now boasts a resident composer. Harry Sider had a few years of formal piano lessons before deciding to go his own way.
It all started really when I was just playing on my piano at home, just making up any old thing. Gradually I sort of worked out a tune with just messing about. And then I created bits and pieces here and there, and I joined them together. And there it is. I cannot hear the full length of the piano, and the hearing aid gets a bit funny sometimes with the music. You can hear the tap of the hammer hitting the strings instead of the actual note sometimes.
I think what one doesn't have to do is to set one's ambitions beyond reality. I think you take the children you've got at whatever level they are and make music at that level. Obviously, as the same with hearing children, there are talented deaf musicians and there are non-talented deaf musicians. You work within the context of the children you have and you build from there, and you build very slowly, and you yourself will feel a frustration because you feel you want to do more. But by slowly working along, a lot can be achieved with a very general bunch of deaf children, I think. And the fun is there for them, and you'll soon begin to see it.
Can you say Baba?
Baba.
Good.
Ba.
Good.
Klaus Bang is a music therapist from Denmark who works extensively with the deaf. He's devised a technique for lowering the pitch of a deaf child's voice with the aid of highly resonant tone bars.
All the children can feel the vibrations from the tone bars, and we try with these tone bars to find the deaf child in his spontaneous voice, to meet him where he is, find that tone which suits to his spontaneous voice. And then we must consider whether his spontaneous voice is too low or too high. We can lift him up or we can lower him down. That's often what we have to do with the high-tensed voices of the deaf child. Letting him imitate each tone until we can finally find a melodic accentuation in his voice, from strong to soft, from stressed syllables to unstressed syllables.
Good morning, Louise.
Good morning,
Mr. Pan, thank you.
How are you?
How are you? I am very well, thank you.
I am well, thank you.
I'm well, thank you.
Where do you live?
Reddish,
Ready.
reddish,
Reddish.
reddish.
And ta-ta-tum, pa-ta-tum, 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 pa-ta-tum. Ho, ta-ta-ta, ta-ta-tum, pa-ta-tum, 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 ta-ta-tum. Ho, ta-ta, ti-ti-ti-tum, pi-ti-tum, 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 pi-ti-tum. Ho, ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. Turn one.
Nina Falaise is a teacher and demonstrator at the London School of Contemporary Dance. She has a form of hearing impairment which can't be helped by a hearing aid. With a 95% hearing loss, she literally has to feel the music.
John, that was lovely, but I wonder if we could have the music stressing the accent on each frappe more. Ti-ti-tum, tum, ti-ti-tum, ti-ti-tum. Yes? If you could set the character of the music in the introduction, it might help. Ready? Preparation? Beautiful, John. Thank you.
As we've heard, musicality is just as likely to be found between deaf ears as hearing ones. But few people deaf from birth have developed a musical talent to this extent.
Well, it came very naturally to me because when I was a very small child, my parents always used to have music on the whole time, my father being a great lover of music. And also they were very extrovert people, and we used to have people in the house all the time, visitors, friends. And because I used to find that I couldn't communicate to people, it used to be almost spontaneous to get up and express myself with the music and almost try to say, look, here I am as well, I'm trying to say something, And so this is, in a way, how I started, by trying to communicate to people through movement. And when my mother and father saw this, they realized that probably it would be a good idea if they took me to a ballet class, and so this is how I started.
Her father brought her along, and she was 13 and a half. And first of all, I refused to take her on because she was much too young. I was only training professional dancers and quite advanced students. But there was that almost begging eyes looking at me from both from father and from child. And then he tricked me in a way and said, at least have a look, what do you think about her? So then I started it was not an audition, but I gave her a sort of private lesson kind of thing. And the challenge was too big. I saw the enormous talent. And it was so interesting to try to do something for that talent. And I also realized that it won't be any good if I get the child into the big class, which is so advanced. So I said that I'll try to teach her privately for the time being and see what happens. And I started to work with her privately.
Maria Fay found Nina a willing and precocious student who often outpaced her hearing contemporaries. But her handicap must have sometimes been a problem, too.
It was a problem, but not completely a barrier, because I already saw that by that time Nina could respond very, very well to things, and I realized that in many cases she was so-called body reading, not lip reading so much that time, but body reading. And in many cases, it was amazing that she was getting the things quicker and more precisely rhythmically and in dynamics than the people who could hear.
Okay, thank you. Right, now, can we have more fluidity in the movements? When you do the poncho, you're stopping rather than keeping it going. As you go down in the poncho, you barely finish when you're continuing and you go up. The whole thing should be like water or melting butter.
Presently, I think that she hears perfectly everything, not our way, somehow differently, but she hears the music better than any of us, I think. She achieved that.
And go. I hear what I hear, which is different most likely from what you hear. I hear the low notes very well, and those notes that I hear I appreciate that much more, and I treasure them very much, and I rely very much on those. And then if I don't hear some high notes or whatever, I get the vibration, and it's through a live orchestra or a piano that this has the greatest help for me, because of the vibration that hits into the ear or from the floor. And so, like, if there's a piece of music where there's all a high section of music, all high, then I just simply calculate from the last low note to the next, and this helps me. You must keep moving whatever you're doing, never stay static.
The funny thing was that when in my open studio Nina was training, and almost every day I had choreographers coming and looking for dancers, and if I didn't tell people that she was deaf, they never would have noticed it. But I felt that it's unfair if it came to it that they chose her, they wanted to have her as a dancer. I felt that my duty is towards Nina just the same as towards the choreographer, to tell that there is this aspect and that she overcomes it. But some people didn't dare to have their Nina as a dancer. But as you know, Nina was on stage for long years. Some people did take the risk. But quite frankly, I think once, the very first job, Nina tricked them because I wasn't there. And Nina tricked them, and she got away with it. And that was her first job.
I have found it very difficult to get jobs in England, probably due to the fact I had a lot of publicity about my hearing loss. However, I did go abroad, and I used to get one job after the other, for the simple reason I never said anything about my hearing loss. And I used to find quite a lot of work abroad. I'm teaching and I'm demonstrating for Maria Fay, and I find that it's given me tremendous confidence. And in a way, God damn it, you know, surely teaching is harder than being directed on the stage by a director dancing in a company. Surely that is, more than anything, communicating. You have to speak, you have to say what you want, and you have to hear the response. And I think it's a very big challenge for me, and I'm enjoying it immensely. Yes. Shoulders down. Yes. Relax. And go. Yes. And on. Knees turn down. One. Now listen to the music. Now just relax. One. Yes, okay, Ronnie, you could have listened to the music just there and be a little bit longer on the port de bras before go into the music. But otherwise, not bad. Good, Gilly. I don't think I'm exceptional. I think that most of my capacities what I've overcome is due to my parents' way of bringing me up. They treated me as an absolute normal person. So naturally, I grew up assuming I was normal. If they wanted to go to a play, they took me along with them. My mother taught me to play the piano. Why not? My father took me to ballet. They had books in the house. I would read. They had records. I would listen to what I could hear of the music. And so I was brought up completely as a normal person. And I think probably with other deaf people, if they can't do something like ballet, it's for the sheer reason that they don't believe they are capable of doing it, when in actual fact they probably are perfectly capable of doing it. If a parent says to a child, a deaf child, you are deaf, the child will believe she is deaf and become more deaf than she actually is. I am deaf, but I don't believe I'm deaf, and therefore I use whatever senses or whatever I can to overcome it. I have trained myself to speak and be normal.